Live today with my guest speaker, Erin Boardman Wathen, and her book is Why Can't I Stick to My Diet? And, you know, the title of the book speaks, I'm sure, so much to exactly what you speak about. So I'm so happy to have you here, Erin. I know personally having to change my diet or look at the way I eat. That was one of those questions that I ask myself all the time, like, why can't I stick to my diet? So thanks for being here today. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So just to start out, let me ask you just to tell us a little bit about some of the things that you do or how you came to write this book. Why this title?
Well, the title I found to be a universal question, sort of, for most women, quite frankly, and men, for a lot of men, because why can't they? They're nice people, right? We're smart, we're educated, we have good intentions, and yet most of us end up falling off the diet, gaining it back, having all these really yucky feelings towards ourselves, and then we have 20 pounds of shake mix and a bunch of like weird bottles with strange metal balls in our kitchen, right? And this keeps happening time after time, and then the next thing comes around, the next trend, the next whatever, and then we'll try that one, and we'll have good intentions, and we'll be motivated, and we'll pay a bunch of money, and we'll buy all the stuff, and then that doesn't work. And so it just became very evident to me that there's something really off here with myself, because I kept jumping from diet to diet, thinking like this one will work. And in the same way, I kept jumping from exercise to exercise modality. And I actually started getting certified in all of them, thinking if I knew more, maybe that would make it work. Like maybe if I got really good at yoga, then I would lose these 15 pounds that I needed to lose that I couldn't, because I worked out all the time, and yet I didn't have the body that I should have. It just didn't make any sense. And so it wasn't until I really got down and dirty with the science behind why I couldn't stick to my diet that I realized it was because I was eating so much stinking sugar and processed food, and what that does to your brain and just your general being, that I was able to really get any sort of a sense of the answers of why this was happening to me and why it happened to me for so long. And I wanted to tell it to people in a way that they could understand. So if you read my book, if you've read my book, it's not super jargony. It's not written that you have to like get out, Wikipedia to look all these words up, because you can talk, glycogen and most people tune out. They just want to know, like, if you eat more sugar, your body wants more sugar. That's very simple. We understand that. But right. I wanted to present it in a way that felt like it was a conversation between you and I versus I'm up here, speaking from a podium. So when I was writing my book, I tried to make it as user-friendly as possible. And what I found out was, through my own, trial and error, is it wasn't until I was able to figure out how much I was emotionally eating that I was really able to shed it for good, shed the extra weight, because so many of us just can't handle those uncomfortable feelings, which happen every day, right? Every day, well, it seems as though every day. Often we have these, yucky experiences. We get a parking ticket, our friend flakes on us, our kid gives us attitude in the morning, whatever. And there's always a choice. Do we take it personally? Do we make it a cornerstone of a bad day? I mean, whatever we do. So sometimes that can be just enough reason for you to decide, I'm going to just go on a food tear. But it can also be a reason for you to sit with it and explore it and think about it and, journal or whatever you need to do to work yourself through it and then move on. But what I used to do was just go find a bag of gummy bears. And then once I started on gummy bears, it was just Diet Coke and then more sugar, then more sugar, then more sugar. And then by the end of the day, I'd have eaten nothing real, be starving, and just, I mean, God only knows my blood sugar was, right? So what I always say to my clients is like, if you're willing to be uncomfortable for 20 minutes, if you have something happen to you, you'll be in a body you're comfortable in 23 hours and 40 minutes of the day. So if we can just ride out that little window, it's amazing what we can accomplish.
Yeah, I think that makes so much sense. I mean, I think, part of the problem is, right, we don't necessarily have coping skills. We don't know how to take care of, stress when it comes up. We don't know how to, process that. And so we'll often get triggered by something, right? And then we go to our food or whatever it is. Some people use wine to relax at night. Some people, use food to help them calm down. And there's all these different coping skills. Some people use TV, right? Like, I'm just going to check out and watch Netflix. And it's like,
absolutely,
we have these coping skills, but they don't always serve like the best part of us, right? And yet we can get so stuck in this loop of feeling bad, and then we feel bad that we did that, and then we go we go back to our coping skill, which is, so it just gets us stuck in this loop. So I love that you wrote the book, and I also love that you wrote it in a way that's accessible, because I do think, partly when I was going through Hashi's, what I found was all the books I read were so like textbook. There was so much information. And when you're not feeling great because of, whether it's whatever it is, the last thing you want to do is try and like figure out all this textbook information. And so just to find something like, it's not that complicated. We tend to complicate things, and we tend to be like information gatherers. And oftentimes that can stop us from actually taking action, right?
No, I agree. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was on a comparable issue to what we're talking about. And the host spent half an hour on what I just said to you. The more sugar we eat, the more sugar we want. I mean, half an hour. I was listening to it, and I'm like, okay, I knew what was being discussed, because I can nerd it out with you all day. But what do you need to know if you're the regular old person in the grocery store? The more sugar you eat, the more sugar your body's going to crave. So maybe it's not a good idea to be eating it, period, in a discussion. It's up to you what you do with that information. I recommend you don't eat sugar, because it's really hard to do it in moderation. Actually, it's kind of next to impossible. So it's not a good call to go there. But
right.
If you really, really need to drill down, and we're talking like super, super like minutia, it's out there. But for most people who just want to know like bullet points, like on a talk show or something, more sugar you eat, the more sugar you want, period. So for a lot of us, like, I always think that there's so much nutrition information out there, right? And most of the time it contradicts itself. Like, one week we'll hear, keto is the way to be, right? And the next week there'll be a study, if you do keto, it's the worst thing in the world. Mm-hmm. And you're like, wait, what am I got to eat in like 2 hours. So like, what am I supposed to eat? But there are some basic tenets that are always true. And I kind of have used the analogy lately, it's sort of like classics. Like, they say like when a wardrobe, there's things that never go out of style. Like, you got your blue jeans, you got your like black skirt, your little black dress, your white crisp shirt, whatever. So there's these kind of like classic building blocks of a healthy diet: vegetables, quality meats if you eat meat, water, portion control, giving your body enough time between meals to properly digest. Don't eat too close to bedtime. So those sort of basic principles are always really there. As far as extreme stuff with intermittent fasting or keto, that's really kind of noise. But if you stick to these sort of basic principles, you can figure out your way. But there's always going to be trends in everything, clothes and food and nutrition. So it is a lot of stuff to take in, but just know that's always going to be this way. Because 5 years ago it was paleo, right?
Yeah.
And before then it was something else that escapes me. I'm sure it was something. Veganism or whatever. So there's always something, But just know that vegetables, lean meats, low glycemic carbs, like that kind of thing, it's not going anywhere. So once you sort of simplify it, you can figure out what to eat.
And I think, like, for me, and that's what I found more and more, is that as I was on this journey to wellness, and I did do like the AIP, which is autoimmune paleo, to like move me through to a certain point. But then it was like, once I could start adding things back in, it's really like, it's not necessarily a formula that's external, right? Like, you start to realize what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and how you can make these adjustments that serve you today, knowing that like the seasons change, and in the winter you're going to want more like soupy stews kind of thing, and in the summertime you're probably going to eat more salads and fruit and things like that, right? So it's like, it's recognizing that if you have any one specific diet that's the same all the time for like the whole year, it's not necessarily going to serve all aspects of you. But if you stick to these classics, like of just knowing how to feed yourself well, right? There's an adjustment period.
I always tell people to have like a 10 items or less go to on their phone, like in the notes. So when you go to the grocery store, and it's a seasonal list, right? I mean, I always have rotisserie chicken on there just because I can do a million things to rotisserie chicken. There was a real simple article once that I ripped out and had on my, my fridge so I can do anything with rotisserie chicken. But, you know, just have a 10 items or less. You can go in the fast lane of, you know, whatever. And keep in mind, like whatever seasonally you and your family like to eat. Like maybe you're a summer squash person, or maybe you're I don't know, rutabaga person, whatever you are, 10 items or less. So you can be in and out of the grocery store in a pinch and still be able to feed everybody. But your list in December shouldn't be the same list in July, because, you know, there should be the basic stuff like, you know, eggs or whatever you're into, but there should be some swapping seasonally. And one of the unfortunate side effects of the modern grocery store setup, for lack of a better word, is we can get cantaloupe in Canada in January, and it's awful cantaloupe, but you can buy it when it's so much better for the environment, your body, you know, local, all the other kind of things. If you go to the farmer's market, if you at least get stuff that was less than 100 miles away, it's also fresher, and your body is acclimated to what sort of environment you're in. So I live in Connecticut right now, where it's really disgusting and cold and gray and soggy. So if I ate nothing but, you know, pineapple and salads and all this sort of cooling foods, my body doesn't need to be cooled. It needs to be warm. So it also, you know, does it really need a bunch of pineapple right now? Not really, but I can buy it. So that's also something people need to get over, is just because they sell it in the grocery store doesn't mean it's really the best thing for your whole body. But they're still going to sell it at Whole Foods. They're still going to sell it at Stop and Shop, even though it doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense.
And I think that's why, like, just to take the guessing out of the equation, is if you do have local markets and things like that that you can go to, all of a sudden you are surrounded by all of these things that are in season, you know? So at least that's a good way to kind of do your market research and know like what's growing in the community right now, so that when I go to Whole Foods, I should be able to buy these similar things from this community, right?
Yes.
And because I think sometimes people are like, well, I don't know what's in season if you're that far disconnected from, you know, growing vegetables or whatever. You know, and the only thing I'd add to that is like, even here in Florida, where I guess it's pretty mild compared to what you go through where you are.
I have no idea what I go through, the trials and tribulations.
Well, the weather, you know, it's like, it's
I'm
still
kidding.
it's still winter for us, even if it's 60 degrees, right?
Yeah, of course. No, I understand.
So there's also that understanding of, you know, depending upon the environment that you're in. Of course, if you came to Florida, your body would think you were in summer right now. You know, so it's like you can adjust your diet at that point, but it's still what's growing and what's because the minerals that serve you are what grow in your environment, right? So
Absolutely.
I always say one of the reasons that we grow so much citrus in Florida is because we need the electrolytes because it's so hot, right?
No,
so
totally. That's exactly. And that's why sometimes when you think about crops that were brought from other parts of the world that were, it's all kinds of messed up stuff, right? And then they might grow weird or they grow too much. And it's just one of those examples of when we kind of stick to what nature tells us to do, typically, things go best.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like nature is all knowing, right? Like we think we have to study and we have to know all these things, but it really is like if we can just look at what nature provides for us, and if we can, nature does not provide boxed brownies for us. Like that is
no, there's no boxed brownie plant. Yeah,
Hello Green,
Duncan Hines, it does not grow naturally.
Yeah.
No, I always have my clients. Just, when they're first starting out, have them check in with themselves 20 minutes before they eat and 20 minutes after they eat. And at first they're always, I can tell they're just like sort of indulging me because I want them to get used to checking in with themselves. Like if you're really mad at your boss, don't eat anything, please. Just give it some time. And then afterwards, if you're stuffed and your stomach is like doing flip-flops in there, let's look at what you ate, because your body's always giving you information. Always. Do you have a headache? Are you bloated? Are you itchy? There's so many things. But if we're not paying any attention to the information we're being given, that's on us. So let's be in a place where we can pay attention. And a lot of times people are like, oh my gosh, I'm allergic to that, or I have an intolerance for that, but they've never paid enough attention to know that, like, wait, when I eat tomatoes, my neck starts to itch within 20 minutes. I'm like, wait, maybe you're allergic to tomatoes or you have an intolerance for tomatoes. But until we get quiet and listen to what our body is saying, then we can notice.
I completely agree. I mean, I always teach that the body is such a source of wisdom, right?
Yes.
And so often, again, going back to like Hashis or chronic illness, it's like one of the questions you ask is, why is my body failing me, right? Or even like if you're gaining weight, why is my body failing me? Why do I gain this weight? And for me, it's like, oh my gosh, your body's not failing you. It's just giving you information that changes need to be made, that it's not, that there's a problem, that there's a breakdown somewhere. And so if we can start to, translate those messages as opposed to quick fix, let me go on a quick detox diet, or, something like that, which is just actually harder on our bodies, as opposed to actually listening to the information and figuring out, is there something that's inflaming me? And that's why people keep asking me if I'm pregnant. It's not, it's not that I'm eating too much. It's because I'm having an inflammatory response to something or something like that, right?
Well, I always wonder, and I will ask when someone gains weight, like, what's that about? Because when we gain weight, yes, we know how many calories in an apple, right? But it's usually because something is off in our lives, right? We're not sleeping enough. We're not giving ourselves enough downtime. We're rushing. We're getting comfort in the wrong areas. It usually goes back to our relationships. So when I'm talking to someone initially and they say they want to lose 15 pounds, and we'll talk about, what they've been eating, 99.9% of the time, the conversation ends up with their relationships, whether it be with their mother, their husband, their boss, their ex-best friend, because when we're going to food initially, right, it's not because we're bad or we're lazy or that stuff. It's because it does, for a little while, comfort us.
Right.
Initially. And then a bunch of other bad things happen. So when we gain weight, it's usually a sign of an imbalance somewhere in our personal lives that we don't really want to address. And in a way, the 10 pounds is a lot easier, or 15 or whatever it is kind of easier to have. Okay, this is something I want to touch. This is a problem I'm okay with addressing 10 pounds. Okay. For a while, I'll cut back on sugar or something, and I'll listen to this Erin person for a while, and it'll go away by, March. Instead of, wait, my mother and I do not get along, and it's a huge problem, and it's always been there, and that's really uncomfortable, and it brings up all this stuff, and that's why I've been, secretly night eating or whatever. This is way bigger. This is way more of a huge, like, systemic family drama, just dysfunctional mess than if I just go on a detox. Because detox is like the quick fix, right? Quick detox, you don't have to deal with any of the yucky emotional foundation hardwiring. So that's why people like them so much. Because you don't have to dig in.
And what's really interesting about that, though, I think, is that when we go on a detox, like even physically, like if we actually detox our body, the emotions are going to come up at some point, right? So it's like, I think that's one of the reasons we tend to keep our detox pretty short
on purpose. Yeah.
2-day or 3-day detox, because you get to that point where your body actually starts to purge everything, and then it gets uncomfortable, and so you swing back the other way on the pendulum. But I think that, for me, a lot of this ties into stress, right? So when we're dealing with whatever the stress is, whether it's like we don't like our job, or we're having a problem with a relationship, or we're just doing too much in general and we're feeling stress, our body isn't able to digest, right, and assimilate the foods that we're eating. And so oftentimes we will start to emotionally eat, right, because we're just not giving ourselves the opportunity to really digest that information.
Absolutely. I mean, when we don't even chew our food properly or enough, if we gulp too much air, all these sort of simple things, but if we're in a really crazy place, we don't process it well. And the food literally, which I can't stand that word that my 12-year-old uses all the time, our food becomes us. Or it becomes ourselves. It becomes our body. And we're inviting it under very stressful times. So when we do that, it needs to be rethought, because let's have the food enter when we're not in chaos. Right. However, if we're always in chaos, we're never going to eat, I guess. I mean, pretty much like what are the alternatives?
And that's really what worked for me. Was I had to hack like the diet, which I don't even call it a diet. I kind of, I think diet has become a 4-letter word to most people. So it's like I hacked being able to eat a certain way by actually shifting my lifestyle first. It's like, okay, take the stress off you. How do you start to eliminate that stuff? And all of a sudden, eating the way that you want to eat, eating the way that's in alignment with who you are and who you want to show up as, becomes so much easier than trying to, inflict the diet on yourself. So it is a little bit of like this mind game, right? Like, how do you let go of the stress and at the same time eat the way you want to eat? So I love this conversation, Erin. I could just do this all day long.
I agree with what you're saying, because I'll have, I have a lot of people, friends, or just, people who read my book or whatever, and they'll say, I don't know where to start, or one of my least favorite / favorite questions is, I can't start right now because my kids are going back to school, or my husband's business is, very busy. Like, your husband's business is busy? Like, what does that have to do with you? But okay, fine. Or my dad is undergoing chemo. I'm like, okay, your dad is, it's always these like 3 steps of separation for why you can't prioritize your own health. And I'll end up having this like little mini counseling session with them of being like, if you don't prioritize your own health, what makes you think anyone else will, first of all? Second of all, this is the problem, is you're not prioritizing yourself, which is my just, educated opinion. And I'm just thinking, that the weight you need to lose is because you aren't prioritizing yourself, because you're finding comfort in the cookies at night, or whatever your secret eating or whatever your issue is. And also, no one's ever going to say, you know what, now's a perfect time for you, Leah. Just take that time because everyone else's needs are met and life is quiet. I mean, if you have kids and a family and a job and a life, I mean, my husband's never once said, like, this is a perfect time for you just to think about yourself. I mean, no, you have to just decide it is and make it happen. And that's okay, because that's just how life is sometimes. But when it's your health and your self-esteem and all this other sort of interwoven who we are, it's who we are, right? If we don't stand up for it and say, you know what, I deserve better. I deserve to feel better. I deserve to have the best I can be. And if that means I have to exercise every day or go to the expensive grocery store or food prep or take another nap or whatever it is, for me to be my best self for my dad that's in the hospital because it's my, husband's business busy season or whatever the heck that really meant, or my kids are going back to school. Well, then that's what you need to do in order to be able to help those people in your life. But bottom line is, if we don't take care of ourselves, we can't help anyone else.
Right.
And if we don't feel good about ourselves, and this is what I've learned, not just from my clients, but from myself, if we don't prioritize ourselves or feel good about ourselves, it affects everything.
Right.
It also affects work, how we show up at work, how we're treated at work, if we have a business, all these, I mean, just our self-esteem is, touches everything. So if we don't feel comfortable in our own skin, that's an issue. So we need to get there any way we can. And a really good way to start is prioritizing our own health. But a lot of women typically have this sort of like back burner feelings about like their own needs, because of the money or because of the time or just, but so-and-so has soccer practice, not really connecting the dots that like they can't do it all. And they need to take the time for themselves so they can be the best, whatever they want to be, when they're operating at 100%.
It's really funny. It's funny, not that funny. It's not like haha funny, funny strange. But I was talking to my kids the other night and they were telling me, and this is, going through Hashis and really, really, I think I was probably dealing with exhaustion for a long time before I got the diagnosis, right? And I just thought, well, I have no idea how all these women deal with all this stuff, right? And my kids were laughing the other night in bed because they were like, Mom, do you remember when you used to tell us like all those bedtime stories? And they were like giving me some examples of just like really bizarre kind of bedtime stories that I told them. And I was like, well, was I like half asleep when I was telling you that? And they were like, yeah, you were totally like sleeping. And the thing is that I couldn't wait until 7:30 at night so that I could go to bed. I was so tired. It was everything I could do to get through dinner time and then get to bed. And now, like coming from where I am now and how much energy I have and how clear-minded I am and how much more focus I have, I can see how, I didn't fail them in any way. I was a really good mom to them, but at the same time, if I could be the way that I am now, could I have been better? Probably, and yeah, I was doing the best I could with everything that I had going on at the time. And it's really interesting for me just to realize that it wasn't until I got a virus and I really got knocked to my knees. Like I literally could not push through anymore. I tried, and I was teaching with my sister at the time, and she kind of looked at me and she was like, you need to go home. Like, you're not even making sense, And I was like, it was just insanity that I kept showing up to teach, even though I was so sick. And it really gave me this understanding of it takes a lot sometimes for us to really pay attention. And I'm not really sure, like how that serves you. And so for me, part of the way that I really like to work with women in general is like 15 pounds might seem like nothing to some people. It's like, I kind of fluctuate 15 pounds here or there. But the question is like that moment that you start to feel the discomfort, the moment that you start to have the awareness of like, I don't feel that great. That's like the moment to start listening, right? As opposed to like, like how bad does it have to get before you start to make these changes?
Absolutely. With myself, I just remember always having this, and I call it like the white noise of like the food drama. How, you know, sometimes when you go to a doctor's office, they'll have like a white noise machine so you don't hear like what other people don't. I always had this like white noise machine of like, what did I eat? How many calories were in it? Can I be skinny by Friday? What am I eating? All this like crazy constant stuff. And, you know, I remember like not going to the doctor when I was sick because I didn't want to get weighed. Like, really? Like, that's insanity. And, you know, having 3 pairs of the same pants in my closet, like not like 3 similar pairs, but like 3 pairs of the same Lily Pulitzer pants, because I didn't know what size I was ever going to be. Like that kind of thing, which of course, in the scope of human suffering, I get why people might not understand it. But if you've been in the same place where you were really, really uncomfortable in your own skin, I was. So for me to be able to maintain a weight that I want to weigh without a lot of stress, that if someone asked me what I weigh now, I wouldn't lie, you know, that kind of a thing is a big deal for me, especially since I'd been, you know, fighting with my weight since I was like 14 years old. And the other day on one of my blogs, I talked about how I lost 30 pounds. Like at the time, I'm like, 30 pounds, no big deal. Now I'm like 30 pounds between my freshman and sophomore year of high school. And when I came back to school, people thought I was a transfer student.
Wow.
Yeah. Now I'm like, that's kind of twisted. But for someone that had been like all over the place, to be able to maintain a weight without a lot of stress and, you know, just huge amounts of mental thought going into it, and just to be able to eat and not be obsessing with what's for dinner and if I can work out because I need to burn, to have all that just constant back of my mind noise to go away, it's been a huge accomplishment. And one of my clients is going through a really big crisis at work, and it's actually kind of like a huge deal. And she texted me a couple of weeks ago and said, it's so amazing to not have food be an issue right now, because she's just eating. And like, of course, you know, stuff is being thrown at her every single day, all day, but she's still eating like she always wanted to be, but couldn't really get there. But now she is, so she doesn't have the stomach aches or the guilt or any of that other stuff she had when she was emotionally eating, because she finally found a way of life. Because that's what I'm really big on, is a way of life, a way you eat. It's not the diet, because diets, we go on, we go off. But when it's the rest of your life, or a way of eating, or a food plan, or whatever we're going to call it, that doesn't have an end. Because the thing with diets is they usually have an end, like a 21-day fix, or or whatever. There's, you know, the finish line, right? Because, you know, when you lose weight for the reunion, for your wedding, well, then there's the next day, and usually there's involving some sort of a party and where you eat a bunch of pizza or whatever. So, but when you find a way that to eat that works for you, whether it be, you know, your autoimmune disease or just, you know, your mental health or whatever it is, it's really very freeing, because you don't have to worry anymore about, you know, your chronic fatigue, or, you know, just your anxiety about your weight constantly, or if you're addicted to sugar or any of those sort of things. It is possible to move on with your life and not have that constant problem that you once had, even though it seemed like forever it was just going to be the way it was. Like me having body anxiety, drama, food issues, that's just who Erin was. That's what pretty much everyone always thought. Like, Erin's just neurotic about her weight. Like, that's just how everyone looked at me. But for me, I just like, I don't want to be that person forever. Like, that's, you know. And now I've noticed people don't say stuff like that to me anymore. It's like, Erin's the one that wrote the book. I'm like, well, I guess that's a better thing people introduce me as. So it is possible, and it's totally doable. I mean, and I was one of these people that like never thought I could ever get away from it. Like, it was just, you know, I was going to be 90 in the rest home and telling you how many calories I ate for breakfast. I was convinced because it just seemed like, I just always thought I always had this sort of like, wish, I guess, that, or dream that when I got older, I would outgrow it. Like I wouldn't be crazy about food when I got older.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept getting older. Or then when I had kids, or when I got married, or when I, hit 30 or whatever. And it kept following me. Like it was because it was in my head. But I'm sorry,
yeah.
what?
I said it was habitual. So it's kind
Yes.
of like that's what you were practicing every day, right?
Well, yeah, I know that now. But at the time, I just thought I would outgrow it. Like, every teenage girl is obsessed with their weight, or every 20-something girl. And then I got older and I'm like, wait, no, this has got to be a solution to this. So it is possible and it is doable. And if I can do it, anyone can do it.
And I think that's really the key of the conversation, isn't it? It's like one of the best ways to do it is to make the space around it, get help, and just take action. Stop getting lost in like researching all the new diets and all of these things, and just look to somebody to actually give you guidance in how to make these changes in your life if you don't know how, because we do just assume that at some point we'll have a new understanding, or something will change that will make this just happen within you. And it really is that things don't just happen. You do have to take action. Things happen either by action or inaction, because either one is an action, right?
Absolutely.
So I think being able to, get somebody that has been there, understands you, and can move you through it is really ideal. And for me, like the power of coaching and having a coach, I was just having this conversation with a friend the other night. I was like, it's amazing how, the stories in our head all of a sudden will be diffused when there's somebody there that's just like, do you really believe that? Is that like real? And you start to realize like how many things we really do believe, we think we believe, until we actually look at it. And to me, like that's the biggest gift that coaches have given me is just the opportunity to question like my stories, like, oh my gosh, that is such a story, and be able to, create a new story going forward, or a new path into the lifestyle that supports you. So
absolutely.
So thank you for being on Facebook Live with me today and having this conversation. And I think we could just go on and on, because it is such an amazing subject and it's so important. And there's so many people suffering with their weight, with the way they feel, with what it is that they want to create, and coming up against that physical obstacle. So will you put a link to your book in the comments on Facebook?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So if anybody wants to download your book, they can do that, and they can reach out to you from there, or myself. And thank you everybody for being with us today.
Bye.
Bye.